Welcome into Rob Shanks Pop Culture. And on today's show, we're going to talk about a movie that came out in 1980 that is cheesy, fun, sci-fi that I absolutely love. It's not the best movie ever made, but it sure is a lot of fun. We're talking about Flash Gordon. So Flash Gordon, there's so many interesting stories behind this movie and behind just the making of it. So let me start with something that is very fascinating about this. Flash Gordon obviously was a comic strip and a 1930s serial, and it really inspired one George Lucas. George Lucas wanted to do a Flash Gordon movie instead of Star Wars. He had planned on getting it, but could never get the rights to it, and so he ended up doing Star Wars instead. And thank God he did, because I love Star Wars. As you can probably tell by some of the posters behind me, I've got like the Jedi poster and then Empire and A New Hope right over there on the other wall too. But Flash Gordon, the rights were finally purchased by Dino De Laurentiis, who is a very popular producer in the late 70s, early 80s. And he got Mike Hodges to direct this adaptation of the Flash Gordon serials. So they kind of combined it together and put together a Flash Gordon movie. Now, obviously, this is based on the adventures of Flash Gordon. Instead of a polo player, he's a football player to make it more modern, and he plays for the New York Jets. And he and Dale meet. They have a plane crash and bump into Dr. Hans Zarkov, who discovers that the incidents happening on Earth are cosmic and caused by Ming. And so they travel through the void to, where Ming rules the planet Mongo. And basically, the adventure begins with trying to stop Ming from destroying the Earth, and involves Prince Barin and Prince Voltan to fight Ming. And it's really a cool movie. We'll get into more of the plot and more of the summary when I show you the slides. But some of the facts about this movie is what we're going to go over. The styles, the costumes were some of the visually stunning pieces of this movie, were what made it stand out. And basically, you had Delano Donati, who just had vibrant colors, and he created all the costumes, and he was trying to capture the essence of the original comic strip with all the ornate places and the different world buildings that it had. So the special effects are not as good as today's, but back then they were pretty good. And they used practical effects rather than CGI, because CGI wasn't set up back then. So really, when you look at this movie, you can appreciate some of the visuals from back then. Yes, they look cheesy and hokey now as compared to today's standards, but back then, this was cool. This was like, so this came out a little bit before Empire came out, and it was kind of that movie that kind of in between Star Wars and Empire, that you kind of just was like, oh, another cool sci-fi movie. Yes, let's go. At least that's how I felt about it. I love watching this movie. It's one of those movies I will stop down and watch just about any time I see it. One of the things that makes this movie great is the soundtrack, and we'll talk a little bit about Queen doing the soundtrack and a little bit of how they got the job, but it's just a fantastic soundtrack by them. Brian May has some excellent guitar work. Freddie Mercury's Flash theme is really well known. I mean, come on, guys. Everybody knows this. Flash. I mean, just iconic. Just the music alone, you would know it. So, I mean, it just was great. The movie did have some interesting actors in it. You had Brian Blessed, who's Voltan, who just is amazing. You had Timothy Dalton as Prince Barin. This is before he became James Bond. And Max von Sydow, a great classic actor, played Ming the Merciless. And then we'll talk a lot about Sam Jones, who is a new actor in this. So, the movie had mixed reviews, and unfortunately it wasn't as great, but a lot of people in Gen X saw this movie and it inspired them. One of those is Guardians of the Galaxy creator, uh, Gunn. I mean, he was inspired by this. Some other people that were inspired by this include, um, hang on, I've got the notes here. My notes are a little bit, yeah, just several. James Gunn and a couple other film directors were inspired by this. So it really had a huge impact on visual style and just the idea around Flash Gordon, how you make a cheesy sci-fi movie. But I mean, you know, it's one of those movies that I still can watch today. It's so much fun. I remember watching it as a kid and then seeing it various times when it came on cable. But let me get into some of the facts, and then we'll get into the slideshow of the movie, and I'll tell you about my favorite scenes. So the ending of the movie. So Flash jumps towards the end of the screen, yelling, "Yeah!" That was completely improvised by Sam Jones. Nobody could figure out how to end the movie because it was kind of haphazard. They had a script, but they didn't stick to it. And so he just did that, and that kind of ended the movie. I'll get to some of the scenes that were cut or supposed to be changed in a minute, too, because they're very interesting. All the main cast members were signed for multiple films. So this was supposed to be a trilogy. The first movie, unfortunately, didn't do well, so the sequels were never made. I mentioned George Lucas. He was a fan of Flash Gordon, but he couldn't get the rights to the comic strip, so he made Star Wars instead. Interesting facts about Max von Sydow. So the Ming costume, it weighed over 70 pounds, and he could only stand in it for a few minutes at a time. This is the main costume that we first see him in, and a couple other times we see him in that. It's just huge. But that thing weighed 70 pounds. I can't believe that. I wonder how bad it hurt him. Early in the film, Ming always is shot from below, putting him above the audience. Later, as Flash begins to unite the forces, he's shot level with the audience. And towards the end, we see him shot from above, symbolizing defeat. So that's kind of a cool thing. All right, so this is what I've always wondered. I didn't know this about Flash Gordon. Kaleidoscope is an interesting character. And according to Peter Wyngrade, the hand that picks up Ming's ring at the end in the film is Kaleidoscope. And you're like, but Kaleidoscope died. Well, despite dying in the film, it was planned to revive him for a possible sequel. In years since, the filmmakers have revealed that the plans for the second film was to reveal that there are multiple versions of Kaleidoscope, which kind of makes sense if you saw some of the executioners. They almost had the masks that looked like Kaleidoscope. Anyway, so there are multiple versions of Kaleidoscope, and they're all clones of Ming, which is the key to his immortality. So Kaleidoscope wears a golden mask so that if Ming were to die, Kaleidoscope would take his place, and another Kaleidoscope clone will be awakened. Kind of interesting, unique. It's also probably why he has the same signet and is, his right-hand man, literally, which is fascinating. It's very interesting. I wonder if that's also why he has the gold hand. Anyway, Kaleidoscope was not in the original comic strips nor in the 1930 serial, and he was created for the film. Basically, honestly, Kaleidoscope was supposed to be their Darth Vader compared to Ming's Emperor. That's how that was supposed to work out. Just so you know, that's interesting. Sam Jones is not a natural blonde. He had to dye his hair for the movie. And Melody Anderson is not a natural blonde. She is a natural blonde. She had to dye her hair brown. Interesting stuff. Flash was supposed to have blue eyes, but Jones couldn't wear the contact lenses. All right, so here's an interesting fact about Queen. Dino De Laurentiis had never heard of Queen before. The band was approached for the gig in 1979, and they were immediately interested. Their manager arranged a meeting with Dino De Laurentiis to discuss the opportunity, and he allegedly asked, "Who are the Queens?" Which is just silly because Queen was one of the most popular bands at the time, and they jumped at the chance to do this movie, and they ended up doing the Highlander soundtrack as well. But the funny thing is they weren't the first band that they wanted. So throughout the film, the director wanted Pink Floyd, and he played Shine On You Crazy Diamond throughout filming, hoping to get Pink Floyd. When they couldn't get Pink Floyd, they turned to Queen, and Queen said yes. So interesting stuff. The Hawkmen had really cool costumes, but did you know when they went on break, they couldn't sit down? Yep, the costumes would hurt their back because they were so big and bulky. Melody Anderson told Starlog magazine they could never sit down because when they did, the wings would dig into their backs. When they had rest periods, all you'd see all these guys lying on their stomachs with the wings, and it looked like they were trying to take off. According to Brian Blessed, he had to sit on a perch, which is kind of funny. All right, so let's get into Sam J. Jones. Wow, interesting stuff about him. All right, so first off, he was cast after Dino De Laurentiis' mother-in-law saw him on an episode of The Dating Game. Yes, that's right. Yeah, The Dating Game. Sam James Jones. That's how he was discovered. Oh my goodness, that's crazy. He had a falling out with Dino De Laurentiis over perceived lack of payments and was called back to work during the second unit shot in post-production. Most of Jones's dialogue was dubbed. Yes, dubbed. For years, the identity of the voice actor who provided the voice was unknown, even to Jones himself. So Jones had such a falling out, and part of it was his first film. We'll talk a little bit more about him getting into fights because he kept getting into fights during the filming of the movie. At one point, he had to be hospitalized with a big scrape on his face, and De Laurentiis himself barged in the operating room to make sure they fixed his face so as not to leave a visible scar. But Jones kept causing trouble, and then at Christmas, he left and never returned. And part of the thing was his agent didn't like Dino De Laurentiis, had a dispute with him, and was using Sam to kind of get revenge on Dino De Laurentiis. And this was Sam's breakout movie. This is his first film. So his agent really didn't do him right by giving him bad advice. And so he didn't come back to redub his lines. So his lines were dubbed by somebody else. And we didn't know until October 2017 when a user on Science Fiction and Fantasy Stack Exchange forum suggested the voice of actor Peter Marinker based on a compilation of samples of Marinker's work in anime. So based on this evidence, the credit was added to various film credits database and mentioned in other sources. Then in 2020, an interview with filmmaker Dominic Hailstone, Marinker confirmed that he was indeed responsible for looping most of Jones's dialogue in secret, but some of Jones's lines were left intact based on the strength of his performance of them. So whether it was 90% or a little bit, there we go. We have Marinker is the name of the person, Peter Marinker, who did the voice. So interesting stuff. Always knew that it was dubbed. I just didn't know who did it, and it was a mystery for the longest time, but it's been resolved. According to Brian Blessed, who played Voltan, it took about 3 days to prepare the Ajax sequence and put everything, including dozens of hanging Hawkmen, in place. Blessed put his own special effects going pew, pew, pew as he shot the cardboard bazooka, which he didn't need to do, but they couldn't overdub it. So guess what? They had to do multiple shots because he did that. And they needed to get him to stop doing that. Sam Jones also was guilty of doing the pew, 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 pew with the guns, which, think about it. If you were a kid or an actor or somebody and you got to fire a cool looking prosthetic fake gun, you'd be doing pew, 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 pew too. According to a 1981 interview with Starlog magazine, Dino De Laurentiis wanted Kurt Russell to play Flash Gordon. All right, let's stop right there. Kurt Russell as Flash Gordon would be pretty cool, but Kurt Russell said that really didn't have the personality he was looking for, and that's why he turned it down. And he lacked personality. Guess what? He did Escape from New York instead. So we got Snake, which is awesome. Another great, great, great role. Anyway, we had another star that had a cameo in this movie. Guess what? Robbie Coltrane appears as the man in the airfield scene handling Flash and Dale's luggage, his first appearance. And then the first draft of the script, these are some interesting last two notes, had among other things, no Kayla, Kleidos being a psychic, a Tiger Man aiding Flash, Ming having a group of Amazon warriors, and a proper sword fight between Flash and Ming. Now, I don't know about the Tiger Man helping Flash. I like Clytus as he is. I like Kayla as she is in this. But man, did they need a sword fight between him and Ming. Ming dying the way he does, and you'll see it in the film. In the shots, I just don't think it does it justice. I thought a sword fight would be really cool. And then one final note. In the original script, Flash and Dale first meet at a Canadian resort called Dark Harbor. Although they flirt with each other, they don't become acquainted until they're sharing the ill-fated plane ride to New York City. Dale later talks briefly about Dark Harbor during her tear-filled meeting with Flash before his execution. So, let's hear a little bit about Flash and that. What facts did you find interesting? I hope you thought these were interesting. I hope you found them fun. But let's get into some of these slides and let's talk about and see what's some of our favorite scenes in this movie. So I did a bunch of slides for this movie. I love the opening sequence. I mean, you've got the Flash Gordon theme, and then here's the sword fight we didn't get. At least we get a picture of it. But man, wouldn't it be cool to get a sword fight? So you have them meeting on the plane, Flash Gordon signing autographs. Here's Zoltan, and he's kicked out of NASA and forms his own ship and has his own laboratory. They crash land there. And basically, he's going to get them to join him on his ship unwillingly. There's the ship boosting in outer space. Now, back then, this didn't look as fake as it does now. I mean, this is what we're talking about. The special effects, these are practical effects. It's cool, kind of a retro thing. But today, if you did something like this, you get blasted for it. It'd be like a B movie. Anyway, I thought this was a cool effect, going to the vortex. And then crash landing on Mongo. And you got the bad guy, which gives him a hand. Here are the Hawkmen. And you can see how elegant the design is. First picture of this. And then here we go, Ming. And this is the 70-pound get up for Ming. Sorry, I have to keep going back and forth because the slides are kind of funky. There's Prince Timothy Dalton's character, Prince Barin. Pretty cool tree-like kingdom. There is somebody who defied Ming. I forget the guy's name. This is a pretty cool scene. He tries to defy him, and Ming just zaps him with his ring. There's the beautiful daughter of Ming. She's gorgeous in this. And there's Flash Gordon and crew. And you see more of the innate costumes here in some of these scenes. Interesting color palette. There's Ming basically putting Dale in a trance. And I read supposedly what you're supposed to see is really there was a cut scene here where she's supposed to imagine that she's on a 1920s picnic with Ming. Interesting stuff. That would have just been awkward if they would have shot that, but I'm glad they cut that out of the script. Then you had the football fight, which I didn't get so many pictures of because it's, let's face it, that football fight is funny, but it's cheesy as all get out. I think the best part of the football fight is Voltan with his little hammer knocking the bad guys down and hitting them over the head. I thought that was awesome. Then you got more of Clytus, and he's set to be executed, and he gets rescued by Ming's daughter. And here we've got Hans getting zapped. They're gonna take away his memories. And it says Flash heading to where Prince Balin's people are. She's saving him. This is a special drink. And she tricks the person giving it to her and dresses in her outfit, which is kind of cool. And she has her Princess Leia moment where she shoots some of the guys, and you Clytus and one of the generals. And this is the tree and the stump. So she runs into Hans and he kind of rescues them, and they run into the Hawkmen. The daughter gets captured, and I thought the torture scene was pretty cool. Kaleidos is just ruthless in this, and Ming just approves it. The Hawkmen rescue them, take them to Prince Bolton's kingdom. Has a cool little feast, and guess what? If you look on here, if you look at some of the food, there are Twinkies that are colored different colors. Yes, they use Twinkies for some of the food on here. Kind of cool, kind of interesting. Flash is challenging the prince's stuff. They have to put their hands in the thing. I thought this was a cool scene with like the scorpion like thing. We saw where it stings and kind of kills somebody. Flash kind of passes the test, um, but is still imprisoned. They put him down in the swamp, and basically, um, he gets rescued by the prince. They go to Volton comes and captures them both, and he decides, hey, I'm gonna fight. He sees Dale again. She thought he was dead. He's alive. Hooray. And the fight scene. So this fight scene is one of my favorites. They're on this swiveling little circular disc, and Volton's controlling it, and he's got spikes. They've got whips. You see where they're going after each other with whips, and Flash gets the edge and saves his life, and he pledges himself to him and their cause. They decide to combine forces. Hawkmen aren't quite convinced, and Kaleidoscope shows up. And you see Kaleidoscope with his gold arm, which I think this is a cool scene. Kaleidoscope shows up, and basically they kill him. I mean, this is a cool scene. Now, I think it's interesting that he's got like some of the symbols of Ming, and to think that he's a clone of Ming is pretty awesome. Anyway, that's Kaleidos. And then Ming shows up. Basically, the Hawkmen leave. Dale and Zarkov are captured along with Timothy Dalton's character, and Ming offers Flash Gordon a kingdom. Flash refuses. The Hawkmen retreat down to the Forest Kingdom. Flash is able to escape on a rocket cycle. The cat fight, which is really cool, between Ming's daughter and Dale. Flash, basically, he's going to go to Ming's castle and draw one of their ships out. The plan is to take over the ship, and the Hawkmen are back behind those clouds. And we get, what do you mean Flash Gordon's approaching? There you go. What do you mean Flash Gordon's approaching? So Flash, they send out a ship. Flash lowers them into the clouds, which is pretty cool. I love this shot. This shot's actually pretty cool. With the map painting, you see the cloud stuff, and you see Ajax's ship, and you see the Hawkmen army is up there. It's pretty cool. And the guy who played Hawkman Volton, he really got into it, and he kind of inspired the whole cast, according to everything I've read. So we're getting ready. Wild Dave, which I think is so cool. This battle is so awesome. It's so cheesy, but it's so cool. I mean, it's like Star Wars here. And then we find that Dale's going to be Ming's queen, and so you see Barin and Zarkov. Tell me about this Houdini, and you see graffiti. Long live Flash, which I think is interesting. And so you see more attacks on the ship. Gordon and Volton are gonna ram the ship into their electric field. Gordon makes the decision that, hey, somebody's got to fly it, and there's the electron field, which is kind of cool. And so he's approaching it. Barin escapes. Barin and Zarkov escape thanks to the Emperor's daughter. and Timothy Dalton shines in this part. He just takes out a bunch of the guards, and you have the wedding between Ming and Dale. Barin is able to shut down the grid and cut down the shields. The ship's coming in. Everybody retreats, and Ming gets it, which I thought that was tacky. I wanted Ming and Flash to have a sword fight, but I guess with as heavy as the costume was from Max von Sydow, they couldn't properly do that. But I thought it would have been cool, And he goes, "My life is not for you to take." And here's the ending where Flash Gordon, you saved your Earth, because they didn't know how to end it, and then that's where he jumps up and does the yeah, and then you have the ending with the Baron and Ming's daughter becoming the new rulers, and you have the Hawkmen thanks Flash, and then of course the ring, which we already mentioned, is picked up by another Kaleidoscope character, which is kind of cool. Anyway, that's it for Flash Gordon. What do you think about this movie? What's your favorite scenes? I personally like the scenes with Flash and the Baron, Timothy Dalton's character. I love that fight that they have with the whips and the spikes. That is one of the coolest scenes. I love where they're challenging each other to put their hands in the pits. That's really cool. I love the attack on the Ajax ship at the end. That is awesome. I just wish there was a fight with Ming at the end too. But I love this movie. I love Kleidos. I love the pacing. I love just the action in it. It's cheesy sci-fi goodness and a lot of fun. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this movie? What's your favorite scene? What do you like? Tell me in the comments below. Take care, and we'll see you on the next one.